long. I think it's great. And for those who don't know, I'm Steve Deneen, president and founder of Few. So I'm going to kick things off, and then Reece is going to come in. But at the same time, guys, any questions that come in, love you to ask those questions. Feel free to put in the chat. Whoever's not talking, we'll jump in and answer those questions. And let's keep this as fun and interactive as we can do. But yeah, what an exciting topic, and what a time to be inside our industry. So quick agenda. So always ask the first question, right? Because it tees us up for everything else. So just in the chat bar, when you go to learn in your personal lives, where do you start? It's always a great question to start for 10. Let's see what comes in. See how these questions maybe differ. Well, and Reece, just let us know on your side what you see coming through.
Certainly will. We've got a few chat GPTs. We've got a lot of Googles. Got Instagram, LinkedIn, friends and family, YouTube, communities, Google, bit of chat GPT, but not that much. Colleagues, there's quite a few. Books. There you go. Blinkist, the digital books.
Love it. You love some of that.
Yeah, I love Blinkist as well.
So I think all in that point, right? So I think always kind of make the point that I guess if we asked that question 10 years ago, I guess we'd probably be getting a variety of different answers between that, right? Probably get more on the kind of books and maybe more on the people next to us and more of the friends and family. Now, obviously, we're going to AI technologies like Google, like ChatGPT. I find myself going to Bard a lot now, Google Bard, because it's real time. It's giving me that kind of combination of GPT and Google. But it's definitely evolving. And as you can see, I think just in the chat comments that come through, we see it evolving. So second quick question. Where do you go to feed your digital curiosity? So when you're curious, you've got that 5 minutes spare and you just want to go in and be informed or being updated, or I personally, I go to Flipboard. Flipboard's my go-to with personalized feeds. That is one of my go-to morning and evening type sessions. So where do you guys go? What's your equivalent?
We've got Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, a lot more Google, Insta, YouTube, Fuse. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Thanks, Terry.
Love that.
Alexander gets a cup of coffee. And I definitely subscribe to that. Yeah, Pinterest. Yeah. Oh, I got Summer says Pinterest lol. So I'm not sure whether she agrees with it in Pinterest or whether she's like, does that still exist?
And again, she's making the point that these are new habits, right? We've got, whether that's search or whether that's feeds, these are new habits we've got. And what we're going to probably be finding, I think with AI, we're going to be creating new habits on top of these habits, not necessarily replacing habits, but there's only 100% of our time we give. So it's going to be a pie chart where we divide our time up. A typical slide, I just want to hit a few points in here, right? Around the fact that already there's that statistic of 86% of people say they learn on YouTube, and that 142 minutes a day on social media. I think what we'll probably find is chatbots, if we ask this question in a year's time, for things like ChatGPT or Bard or others or whatever we're going to do inside that space, which we'll talk to, all of those type of things, I think inside there are going to take up a portion of that time. Interesting, the 75% of info transmitted to the brain visual, always get amazed by that one. Okay, so the first big question for us, Brendan, guys, is why are we interested in this topic? So why AI and corporate learning? Why is it such an important thing we think for us? And what problems do we think it can help solve in our learning and performance world? So we're going to probably highlight around these 5 buckets in this session. So there's a bucket around that. We know language is a accessibility barrier. Learning in mother tongue is always going to be the best thing possible towards it. But obviously cost to translate, cost to localize, speed of all that stuff has been a barrier to make that a barrier that still exists. The second thing is time to answer. I think I saw a quote even yesterday, I think, which was the average knowledge worker spends up to 12 hours a week finding information, finding knowledge, searching for information. So that's a barrier that we're interested in massively reducing. The third is the time and cost to create quality content, whether there's questions or videos or interactive activities, but the cost to create quality content. And we're interested in anything that's interesting to accelerate that capability. Maybe fourth, in our learning world, the lack of relevancy in our recommendations, which then limits that curiosity, limits our learning platforms to be the curious place that we go to. And then the fifth one is, coaching, because mainly it is face-to-face, right? Therefore, it's only available for the few, right? It's not something that is democratized, where we're able to give great coaching available to everybody that can benefit from it. So those are 5 problem areas that we believe different types of AI and there are a variety, there's a lot out there and changing on a daily basis. The speed of releases is kind of crazy right now. And I think if we use this, there's an old slide we use, but I think it really hits to what we're going to talk through now, right? Which is ultimately why we're interested in this. And if you look at, for those familiar in London with the black taxis, it very much represents the traditional model of learning, right? Which is you're taught to remember everything on a London road. So literally it takes 3 to 4 years to learn every road in London. So anybody who taps on the window is going to say, yeah, I can take you there from the knowledge, in your memory, versus your Uber driver that says, we don't worry about that. Just need to have a car, have a driving license, and then we're able to get to that capability 100 times faster. And that's a scary number when you think it's 100 times faster, right? 100 times faster than the black taxi, the London taxi environment towards that. So that's why we're interested in AI, right? Of models, which like Google's done here, which is, are there things we can do to get people to accelerated learning and to accelerated performance 10 or 100 times faster? That's the interest. So how AI will revolutionize corporate learning. So these are the 5 areas: translation, localization, finding answers, content creation, recommendations, and virtual assistants or teachers coach. Really, really exciting area. So the first thing we want to touch on is how it's necessary, I think, because I think one part, right, that obviously there's been a lot of excitement around what ChatGPT has brought to the marketplace. We've been really, really super excited about this. But then obviously there's the thought that we can simply take that and just replicate it, and it's going to give us exactly the same intelligence on our corporate networks, straight away. So the first thing is, how do we start to prepare and get our worlds ready for that type of experience that generative AI, on top of it, other AIs can benefit from as well. So from our perspective, there's actually, I think, just going back to here. So there's, I guess, three parts to this. So part A on the left-hand side is what we do inside Fuse, for example, is to enrich everything that is put into Fuse, to index everything in it. So that's why we transcribe every video from a video to text. That's why we extract out all the text inside a file, inside a video, inside a PowerPoint document. We extract all of that text along with all the transcripts, and all that information is then still stored in its raw format in this index, this corporate brain. So we've been doing that now for a couple of years, getting ready realistically for what comes next. The second thing that then happens for this corporate brain is that content is enriched. By enriching, we mean we're adding more information about it. We're labeling it, we're placing it, we're in the AI world, we're also, with the stuff we're doing, is we're vectorizing it. We're understanding and putting it in a way that we understand it in, and we're placing it in this index in a really smart way. So everything is known and everything is enriched. Once that's done, then this is the essence, I think, of what we call knowledge intelligence. Other people will simply say that's making your content and your knowledge data ready. Then what we're able to do is interface into any particular AI we want to, in order to solve some of those problems on the right-hand side. So we can literally pick and mix now between Google to Microsoft to OpenAI to whatever technologies to solve each other problems. So one day, translation, we might believe that Microsoft is best. Tomorrow we believe that Google's best. On Thursday we might believe, and it's going that fast. On Thursday it might be that OpenAI is better at the localization or the transcription piece. So in essence, becoming completely AI ready is, first of all, understanding where you want to get to. Why are you going to do that? Which is the right-hand side. Left-hand side is making sure that everything now in terms of your data is become data ready, which obviously is what we've been doing for the last couple of years with Fuse. And then obviously what we then do is then decide and choose and keep researching, which is the latest AI technology that's better for each task or suite of tasks that we want to do. So let me pause before I jump into more detail and see if there's any questions or things that are coming through, Reece, we want to answer before we keep on going.
We don't have any questions coming through at the moment. Through the chat, there are a couple of questions coming through QA. So let's see. RJ Ferguson says, does Fuse do this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Do you want to take that for me? You go for it, Reece. Otherwise, I'll talk too much. You know me.
Well, yeah, absolutely. The concept of the corporate brain, and as Steve mentioned, knowledge intelligence, something that we came up with around 2 years ago. And what we were simply trying to achieve is how do we remove the barriers between a user that needs knowledge, whether that's an answer to a question or next part of a process, as well as the more traditional courses and skill building. How do you reduce the time, the distance between that person and the knowledge they actually need? And some of the problems that we came up against was we don't know the content well enough. We needed to understand what was inside it. We needed to be able to enrich all of that. And so, yes, that is the path that Fuse has been on. Knowledge intelligence allows us to do the bit on the left, create the corporate brain, because we have that deep understanding of everything. And then, yeah, we are then able to move into this new world of AI. Without giving too much away, we're able to move into this AI world that we'll talk a little bit more about, in more of a plug and play fashion.
Yeah. So in essence, we spent the last 2 years re-architecting our platform to do this. So we didn't used to be able to do it. We had to literally re-architect the essence of Fuse to be AI complete ready. But now we do. Every one of our clients' data is AI ready, and some of them are already obviously using different elements of AI, across the technology today, in recommendations, in transcription, in translations. And we'll talk about the next suite of AI-enabled products that are being released over the months and the rest of this year. Okay, so hitting back to these 5 applications. To hit on the first one's pretty simple, and it's been out inside our clients for quite some time, and it's solving the first problem, which is, and we often hear this from many of the clients, which is, I've got all these different content, if you like. I've got LinkedIn, I've got Udemy, I've got Fuse, I might have an LMS from somebody else. And actually, I don't want to have to do 4 different searches. I want a great front door, like a Google or a YouTube style front door, to find the content. And not just the content at a course level, but ultimately we want to create content, access content at 3 levels. At the macro level, by macro we mean the course or the document. At the asset level of the course, which might be the video or the activity, but actually, ideally, right down to actually an answer inside a video or inside a document. So this example here, just want to talk to the first one with the second one, which is the ability that, if I want to have a quick refresher or maybe learn, I've heard about the 3 types of coaching conversations. I don't have to figure out which platform is best for that. I don't want to have to figure out where in the course it might do. I want that YouTube style experience. So the fact that the AI has automatically indexed, tagged, and creates a super index, a little bit like Google does, allows us to have this aspect of a front door. So if I just show you a little example of that. Yeah, just one here. Here I did one earlier. So 3 types of coaching conversation. We see here, in this case here, it's picked up an individual video from LinkedIn. So I don't have to worry, it's the best video on YouTube, it's on LinkedIn, wherever it happens to be. I can just take me straight out to not just the course, but actually to the individual element towards that. So in the case of LinkedIn Learning, for example, there's, I think 20,000 courses and about 300,000 videos. So this global search means I don't have to worry about platform. I don't have to worry about the time. It can just take me exactly to that best resource and give us that YouTube experience that some of you guys at the early stage were saying that you wanted to have.
And Steve, before you move on, a couple of comments in the chat around, is this not just an LXP? Is this not just what Degree does? So, how is it different to that?
Yep. Well, I think 2 things. One is we're just going first level, right? This is just top level. We're going to go deeper. So we just wanted to structure it. The second thing is I do believe that we are the only LXP that goes down to that second level. So again, maybe some of the other guys have changed and updated their platforms, but as far as I was aware, the likes of LinkedIn Learning and the other LXP providers at the moment just go to that course level. And that's, I think, how maybe the world of other LMS and LXPs think. They are course centric versus obviously Fuse is thinking about, I guess, the world of learning from 2 perspectives: that moment of career and that moment of need, right? And they are quite different, right? One's a recommendation that says, I want to go from being an individual contributor to a line manager, so give me a pathway recommendation for that, versus this different one that says, I've got a need because I've got to do a coaching conversation and I've forgotten that moment of need. So for that, yeah, so in the first bit is, I do believe we are the only guys that are able to actually get you to the asset level. What we're going to talk about next, then, again, which is definitely unique, amongst any other learning platform is to go to the third level, which is more upon that answer piece. Does that help answer the question, Aries?
Certainly does.
Not to me, but to the person asking the question. You probably know that, you imagine, right? Okay, so the next question. So to that question.
Well, Steve, sorry again before you go on. I mean, we're making good time here. There was another good question. Well, they're all good questions, but another great question maybe just come through, which is this not similar to a federated search? Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
You go for it.
So it is different to a federated search. You know, if you think about a federated search, it's about being able to put two different sources of search side by side. But what you can't then do is you can't actually create one list. And so when we were thinking about the overall user experience with search, we didn't want to, and it was an option for us. We could have had fused results and then linked in, you know, as a carousel or a separate list or something like that. Actually, what users really wanted from our research was just give me the list, you know, and we want to be able to see the things that are most relevant at the top, regardless of the actual source. And so that's what we've done. We've taken all of the content from LinkedIn and Udemy. We put that alongside fused content. Because we've got knowledge intelligence, we can search inside all of it, and then we have one list of search results that come back from that. So there's no artificial injection or anything.
Yeah, and maybe add another thing on top of that, right? Is the other thing in Fuse is we also use social data to make relevancy of that as well. So things like popularity, recency of that. If you've got content that's inside Fuse that's been created a year ago, that's maybe really popular, that might actually, with exactly the same name, it might come higher in that result than something that is created more recently, but not really popular. But something that's both recent and popular is exactly, you go to Google today and do a search on Ukraine news, you're going to see recent popular content. So again, we're always looking at variables and looking at the algorithm to work out for each use case, and ours is a learning performance use case rather than just a pure federated search case. So for our use case, are we setting up our algorithms and the AI in the right way to give us the best answer come back?
And then maybe just one last question here. Is this curated via AI, or does it require a bit of work to be able to pivot to the second level that you mentioned?
The second level I'm going to now, so that's the so I think we're going to separate. We're going to go into the second level now.
Well, let's go and do that then, and then we can come back to it
maybe that question around, is this dependent on what the company is paid? Absolutely, right. So what we would do is we would only surface content people are allowed to see. That's both for internal content, but also external content. So if there's an external content piece, if only some people who've got access to Udemy, a different audience has got access to LinkedIn, people will only get results from stuff that they're supposed to be able to see because they have a license for it. Likewise, if there's a piece of content in an area of the business, like the board directors inside Fuse, but not an area in another that they're not allowed to, they'd only bring that one through as well. So again, we're always trying to make sure that content, whether that's search or curated, so feeds, recommendations, you're only being recommended or be able to find stuff that you're allowed to see for whatever way, because it's paid for or because it's secret or a different level of security you might have. So let's go into the next one. And this is obviously a really interesting area. So this is what we're planning still to release next inside Fuse, which is what we call extracted answers. So this is extracted answers is what Google uses on google.com. So if you go to google.com and do a search on something let's take this. Let's take a question here. I've got no idea if Google knows the answer to that because I don't know if it's on the public web. But asking that didn't manage to provide an answer. We can, but it didn't that time. But let's go for an easier one. So who is the FDA? There we go with that. So in here you can see it bring up an answer, and this is an extracted answer. So it's extracting. This is what we go to for Google every day. This is using their LLM, and it uses technological feature snippets, which uses one of their large language models. And obviously they index the whole of the internet. They don't have to necessarily train it in depth. You can put new content inside there, and Google's constantly crawling to go out and find it. So in our world, really similar concepts. So basically, that technology is now integrated into Fuse and is being piloted in amongst of organizations, including the EU. So we can see here the same type of search term on Google, one was Phil Collins versus that case, would bring back the similar result inside this search term because it's the same Google technology inside here. So if I just, again, a couple of examples of that, pre one's done. So when did the DEA stop manufacturing this product? So let's just type that again. So this is at the moment on about 500,000 documents of the EU and about 5 million paragraphs. But again, it's able to understand natural language, same as for those that have been playing around with other large language models like ChatGPT or Bard. But it understands it, and across those, and it understands that actually this paragraph holds the best answer, and actually that's the bit of the answer which I think that we need, early 2001. So it's extracting the answer out, and that's what Google does today. And maybe just a second example of that. Here's another one I just did earlier. Just see it go live, make sure it's all real. How much is Turkey contributing towards? So that's like, this is the same Google technology, but inside a company's organization. So it wouldn't understand who Gandhi is or Churchill, but it would understand the same type of syntax and natural language. It understands the how's the question, understands that because it got the question mark at the end. And again, it's picking up the right paragraph and the right answer from that. So at the moment, that's what most of us use today in order to provide the most accurate answers. And it probably still is the most accurate technology until we refine some of the generative stuff that Reese will talk to. So again, if you're thinking about an organization that has loads of training manuals, this is huge, right? The ability to ask a natural language question, to understand how to plug a wire, how to do X, Y, Z, how to do some plumbing, obviously would be absolutely amazing for this type of stuff. So like I said, it's in the first couple of clients, and then we go to beta testing, hopefully end of this quarter, I think, put some pressure on research.
No comment.
But yeah, like you say, guys, you can see it there. It's live, it's working, it is real, and it's now just going through testing, because obviously it is a big breakthrough for organizations. And you can see here what we mean by natural language, right? That when it says it understands the word when, so when we understand it's a question, the algorithm would actually, AI would bring back an answer, not a list of suggestions, similar to what Google does. It understands the word stop manufacturing, is similar to until early 2001, and it understands that byproducts is similar to derivatives production. So, and the way it does that is because A is a natural language that Google understands, and B is that everything, all that content is indexed in vectors, basically placed around in a really, really smart, intelligent way. So again, before we move off extracted answers, and we'll come into generative answers later on in the session, let's see if there's any other questions that come through there. How do you ensure that content is accurate? Yeah, go for it.
Did we? I mean, did we fully answer the curated via AI, or requires a bit of work to pivot to the second level? Now that we've gone through that, I mean, the short answer is that the AI does all the hard work for you. You know, so
I think maybe it depends on the AI, right? So this is when I think we're going to come on to accuracy and extracted answers versus generative answers. So today, what we showed you in the first version here was something you don't have to train, right? Literally put a document in and the AI will try to index it and find the right answer towards it. What Reese will come into with generative answers that might need a bit more training. Well, to be fair, both systems need some training to be brilliant, right? But generative answers, a little bit more we'll come to.
well done for not giving it all away there. Yeah, we got some more questions here as well. So how do we ensure that the content is accurate or aligns with our organizational needs?
And I think, well, how do you ensure the content is accurate? That's really interesting, right? Well, the content ultimately is up to the company, right? So it's what you put into it and what you connect to it. So if you bought, I don't know, Udemy, and you believe Udemy is accurate, then we're only going to be able to extract information out from that. Obviously, the algorithm that we're using is going to take fine-tuning, right? Because it's a great question, and we have to take on board multiple parameters to understand whether that's going to be an accurate answer or not, same as Google do. So we will look at things such as, and also allow clients to say, well, should the answer only come from official content, top-down content? Or should it include ground-up content as well? Do we allow certain admins or authors or experts to have a higher weighting, a boost towards it, because they're known as domain experts? How old is the answer? How recent is the answer? How popular is the answer? So all those things that are variables to increase the percentage chance that is an accurate answer. We also always have to balance that out with, right, is that also changes, right? So an accurate answer today may not be an accurate answer tomorrow. So how do we also make sure that our algorithm is taking that on board and also providing the capabilities for people to tune and tweak that. Even inside Fuse, the one in the first version this has is ability to mark an answer. So only an expert or an admin can mark an answer. That may still be a correct answer last week, but not a correct answer today. So all these things are the AI alone is not going to be able to work out everything, right? That's why, the belief that this is always about humans and AI is absolutely kind of key.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really passionate about that statement as well. I'll talk a little bit about it later on, but I do think that's really important. And I think the other aspect of this as well is also it's the user experience. I think user experience is going to be even more important in the future. And so thinking about it from that perspective, when it comes to accurate knowledge, we also have to make sure that the tools are there for people to be able to keep track of knowledge and whether it is accurate, whether it expires, make it really easy for people to be able to keep these things up to date. And one of the examples of what we've been trying to do with that is that when we launch this, we're also launching a second part to the service. This is the AI aspect of it, but we'll also be allowing all of our clients to create official knowledge bases of questions and answers. So you'll be able to create the pairs there. And then those are the ones that are prioritized within this system. So, again, same thing. It doesn't have to be the exact question or the exact text. The AI works all of that out, but it means things like onboarding, product questions and all of that. You can create all of these knowledge bases up front, and then the system can then connect people to that knowledge and answer it in the right way.
Yeah, and maybe to Peggy's question, can you specify your search for internal documents only? So yeah, that's going to be part of the configuration setup, right? So by default, it will only be content that's connected, that's either in Fuse or connected to Fuse, right? So if you bought a library for Udemy or LinkedIn and so forth, right? But also we have crawlers now in Fuse as well. So the ability to point it at specific websites. So if you've got your company website, you may want to actually point it and say, well, I actually want to crawl that. We're not trying to be Google, so we don't want to crawl the whole web, but there may be like, a knowledge bank here and there, or your own website that you may want to crawl. So that type of stuff, it isn't just limited to internal. We obviously want to make sure that it points to trusted resources as well, but not the whole world. Yeah, so which I think answers the next question, company. So could you limit the AI results? Absolutely. I mean, that's our starting place, right? Our starting place is this is an internal Google or ChatGPT, not an external one, right? We're not trying to compete with Microsoft or OpenAI. That would be somewhat of a conflict. So this is internal, but at the same time, we do recognize that crawling some content externally and connecting to libraries is part of obviously what you've already seen today inside here. Before we get to the next question, maybe let's push on a little bit, just we're out of time, and you haven't started your bit, Reece. So
no, that's absolutely fine. You carry on. I'm going to answer some of these questions in the background.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next one is something, obviously, I'm personally, I'm sure Reece is too, but for me, it's a huge one, right? So language is a barrier, right? And the story that I often tell here is with Fuse School, for those that are not familiar with Fuse, we have Fuse School, which is our charity, which we provide free education through YouTube with about 1,000 videos covering maths and science to about, well, actually 6 to 10 million kids a year accessing it. But obviously what we do recognize is that language is a barrier, right? So if mother tongue English isn't how we process information, there's a barrier towards processing that information. And what we did see, I think, on some studies we saw was with actual kids in India, when we gave them content it was maths content, but explained first in 3 ways. First, with a person in English, but with an English accent. Second was in English, but with a local accent from Mumbai. And third was in Hindi. When they listened to the English, explaining the maths, they didn't even understand the English, never mind about the maths, didn't understand the accent. Second one, when it was in local accent, they understood the English, but didn't understand the maths. And when we gave it in Hindi, they understood the maths. So the big thing here, I think this has been absolutely for us, is how do we continue to push that barrier on removing language as a barrier? In the short term, this is obviously what's been infused for a while, which is this capability to translate native language in the product. So text, if you like, translate text in transcripts and in articles and files and so forth. So that's been there for a while. And obviously all we're really doing there is fine-tuning it, right? Fine-tuning it. So can we get better transcription? Can we get more accurate translation? Adding in, company-specific language, all that type of stuff. What we're really interested in, and I think there's, again, massive innovation we're super interested in, is going the whole way to speech and trying to find a way to get that in an automated way as possible. So if you're making a video in English, can we automate that so the video audio comes out the other way? So we know the accuracy now. We're pretty close to 99.9% on transcriptions with some recent updates that we've seen come through. and we've seen translations, depending on the language and potentially on the provider, really making a big increase, I think, in what we're seeing come through on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis. And also what we have seen as well is some really cool technologies that allow us to text-to-speech in a much better way. So text-to-speech is, there's some great examples I maybe have at the end, where you can clone a voice, and the quality of that is very hard to tell the difference between the real person and the AI cloned version of that. And that was one of the projects that allowed us then to localize, if you like, 1,000 odd videos into Ukrainian at a fraction of the cost, another way of doing it. So for us, using AI language, it is a hugely interesting one. Any questions on the localization translation before we pass to is a company coming here? If my competitor, actually, before we get to Bill's one, the last one, does AI address syntax directed translation? I guess if that is if that's specific to a company's terms, then the addition of a company dictionary will take care of that. If that, I'm just thinking of maybe a particular example of that on the syntax part, Reese.
Well, I mean, Bala, if it's wrong, please do put it into the chat and we'll answer that. But that is my assumption as well. And yes, you're right. That is the way to be able to resolve these things, is to introduce a custom dictionary. So if you have corporate specific terms, then it would be able to understand that and then be able to, both make sure that the transcripts, it doesn't then transcribe it into different words or anything, so we're able to retain the actual sentence. And then also with translations as well, with custom dictionaries, it's really key that you're able to translate and keep the actual phrase itself. So yeah, custom dictionaries are the way that we believe that we need to continue to go there, and that gives clients the opportunity to have a bit more control.
Yeah. And Bill, just to make it clear on the, if my competitor used you as well, what stopped me is accessing information. So every company's knowledge is private. It already is on Fuse already. All we're doing is adding a layer of sophistication and AI on top of that. So already inside Fuse, every single instance is completely a separate database or knowledge, if you like, or data set. And none of those data sets, we had that, obviously, you couldn't have British Aerospace looking at Lockheed Martin's information towards it. So everything is completely segmented, but also within inside that, you can also segment divisions, departments, individuals as well. So a person's journey of search or recommendations is only particular to themselves, right? So it's a unique, personalized experience. And maybe there was a quick question there, I think, Reese, on the recommendations. So absolutely, AI does two things in recommendations, right? And I think Reese will come to this as we talk about generative. So on one piece, we see indexing the content is key. If you have an index of your content, then obviously you've got the ability to, if you auto-index, you've got the ability to understand that content deeper, because you've got the tags and everything associated with it. Obviously, then what happens is, because you now understand which every bit of content it is, understand you as an individual, how do I now make a recommendation to say, I know who you are, I know what you need or what you're after, and make a recommendation. I think the bit that, so we already do that already, but I think we do see large language models, what we're seeing, the ability to do that smarter, right? Because it understands people language better. So the ability to say, what are the 5 best recommendations for this person based upon these gaps of this data set, I think what we're going to see is a massive acceleration of the improvements in recommendations at both a micro level and a macro level as we and others insert generative AI into our platforms. Reese, over to you.
Great, thanks, Steve. You're the quarterback now, so any questions that you do have, Steve will be able to answer those and stop me as we go through, and we'll continue to have the discussion. So yeah, let's move on then to talk a little bit more about more future state. So everything that Steve's talked about is what we've done, what we're doing in the kind of the short medium term as such. But I want to focus a little bit more on a little bit further out than that, and maybe do a little bit of dreaming with you all at certain points about what the future might actually look like. But let's start with something that we all something that we all share, which is creating content. And I think that the key thing here is that we, I think generative AI, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is in a moment, but generative AI has the ability to allow us to be much more productive. And as it says here, to be able to create content and courses in hours, not necessarily weeks, which means that we can do an awful lot more. Steve also mentioned a core belief, the combination of humans and AI, and I really do believe that is true, and that is how we get the best approach. And I think At this point in time, that is particularly true of generative AI models. The most widely known examples, when I keep saying that, is ChatGPT, Bing Copilot, which is ChatGPT implemented into Bing, and also Google Bard, amongst many others out there. And I suppose given the buzz across the world, it's understandable that we think based on those headlines that AI is going to replace us. But I really don't think that is true. In the short term, it is that marriage of humans and AI. And so, the way that I've been describing it to people is that it's kind of like making a burger. I'm not sure whether this is a great example or not. You tell me. But, if you think about your productivity, when you are creating a course, you have to do everything, right? You have to you do the buns and then all of the salad and the burger itself. You've got to do all the cooking and the setup and whatnot and all the prep. But then what AI is going to allow us to do, and the way that I think we as humans are going to interact with it is that we kind of become the bun. So at the top, we are setting the task, we're giving it the context, we're specifying what the outcome and the output is, the top bun. The bottom bun is the kind of finished bit. But then where the productivity gains really is all that middle layer, because that's what AI is going to allow us to do a hell of a lot quicker than before. So, AI is the filling, we are the bun, effectively. And so, ultimately, it allows us, and as AI is going to get more and more advanced, I'm going to show you different applications of it, and we'll do a little bit of demos, some videos and whatnot over the coming 10, 15 minutes. But ultimately, it's all about how much more filling can you put in there and still have a really high quality output. So there are lots of AI products that are popping up at the moment, and I suppose the main differences between those products and ChatGPT and Bard and those ones is that each of those products have been trained on, or they've trained their AI model on very specific data sets, and they've been trained to complete tasks, a specific set of tasks which improve their performance. Whereas, when you go on to ChatGPT and Bard, they're more of a general. They're still absolutely fantastic. I'm mind blowing at what it's able to do. But there are lots of other products that are also popping up. And I just want to call out, I suppose, two key areas within content creation where I think today you could actually make some difference and you could start using these straight away. So the first one being script writing, and I suppose not talking about writing movie scripts here, I'm talking about any kind of script when it comes to learning, whether you're going to create an article, or whether it's the text that goes inside a SCORM course, or whether it's the transcript of a video. AI is going to really allow you to do a lot more here. And you can see some of the examples that I put up here. These are ones that I've tested or know about. In particular, I think, Jasper is fantastic for this kind of thing, and a lot more than that. It helps you to create content and whatnot. But these are some of the areas that you could start it out. So I suppose ultimately, what you're able to do here is you're able to give it ideas or give it a script of sorts that you've actually created, but then you're then able to ask the AI to be able to rewrite it. You're able to ask it to rewrite it in multiple different ways as well. It could be, a great example I always see is write this particular article for a 10-year-old, or write it for a 30-year-old, or write it for somebody who is an expert in this particular area, or somebody that is not an expert in this particular area. And then the AI is able to rapidly write that and give you different options. So the way that you can work with AI in script writing there is to allow it to ideate with you, and if you interact with it in that human language way, and I think that's the key thing. Don't think of it like the way that you interact with Alexa or Siri and those kind of things, because that is very command-based, it's command-driven. This is much more interactive. The whole point of an LLM, a large language model, is that it's able to, I suppose, effectively simplify the process and allow you to interact in a conversation that is contextual and accurate. And that ultimately that's the purpose of what these things are trying to do. It's trying to work out what the next word is, and we'll come on to why that's a bad thing in a couple of slides time as well. And you can also make use of these tools to translate. So, we've already got the translation capability within Fuse, but let's say you're not a client of ours yet, then you'd also be able to use these services to perfect your script and then be able to translate those into different languages. And then you could use that to be able to create new content as well. And ultimately, I'm a passionate believer that this kind of thing, you don't need it in a separate place. You should have it within the product as a core feature, which is why we've always tried to focus on translations. But this is another area that we also want to be able to focus on and help people to create content a lot quicker. And I think the bit that everybody really cares about is the main part of content creation. So if that's the research and the ideation, then you get onto the main bits of content creation. And you can see here, you've got things such as Synthesia, which has been around for a long time before ChatGPT was in the wider domain. And that is a really nice tool that allows you to create avatar-based videos. You can put a script into it, it will generate that, and it will have somebody talk through that script. It's still a bit stilted, but I think with AI that's going to change. But I think where you really get into the new world is things like Runway. I'm going to show you a video in a moment of Runway. And Beautiful AI is also another one, which I think you could all use, and I'm certainly starting to use, which allows you to create slide decks. You may have seen some of these things on LinkedIn, but try it, beautiful.ai. What that will allow you to do is to create a slide deck from a set of text. It will then be able to populate that as well, and then you're able to then go and edit from that. And I think that's the main point that I also want to make from this section is the productivity is not necessarily that it's going to complete the whole task for you, like I said, with a button, right? So it's able to do a lot more work. It can even generate that whole slide deck for you. But then at the end of that, you also then have to check the output. And I think that's also a key thing when it comes to a tip. If you are using ChatGPT or Bard for research, ask it specifically to include things like the sources that it's using, so that you're then able to check out the accuracy of that. And we will come on to accuracy in a moment. But let's continue to think about what the future could be. And I'm just going to share this quick video with you of some of the tools that are starting to come out, including Runway, and what they're able to do now.
Text to video with Gen 2. Now you can generate a video with nothing but words. No driving video, no input image. Gen 2 represents yet another major research milestone and another monumental step forward for generative AI. With Gen 2, anyone, anywhere can suddenly realize entire worlds, animations, stories, anything you can imagine. Gen 2, coming very soon to runwayml.com.
So if anybody's really excited and very interested, especially in that last part, it's just gone into closed beta release as well, so should be available for general consumption soon. Same actually with Adobe Firefly. And those of you that use Canva might have spotted the fact that Canva was in there as well, and Adobe Firefly will also make its way into Canva, which I know a lot of our clients use to be able to create really beautiful images, thumbnails, banners, those kind of things. So you'll be able to take advantage of all that. And again, really, I suppose there's just so many possibilities, right, about what you could potentially do with all of these, and just from simple text prompt, rather than all of the necessary research that we might have had to do before, and brief writing and whatnot. So there's a lot of really cool stuff there. I'm going to pause for a second because I think the next section in my memory is going on to a new subject. So Steve, is there any questions or anything that I should go over?
No, I think we're all good. I think press on. We've got about 14 minutes left, and I'm sure there's plenty of good stuff we want to get across.
There's plenty more to do. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, then. Great. So let's go into generative answers. So I'm going to do a really quick demo here, building on what Steve has said. So, as we talked about, Steve was talking about extractive answers. And that relies on the actual the answer to the question being in a specific part of the content. It doesn't have to be labeled exactly. It doesn't have to be the right, the exact words of the answer. The AI is able to sort that out, but it does still have to be in one document, and it has to be in one section of that document as well. So generative AI isn't just about, it is building on that now, and it allows us to now start to get answers from multiple different sources. And that's the really key thing. As I mentioned earlier, generative AI, or the interaction method, I think, for all AI is going to be natural language in the future. I mentioned about Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant. We've been trained to do that for years, but that is command-based, not conversational. I think that conversations now coming into all of these different products is really going to change the way that we do it. So I've set up an example. I'm going to use ChatGPT for this. It's a nice, easy way to do it. I'm just going to copy that just in case anything goes wrong. These things happen when you do a live demo. But I'm using the ChatGPT playground. And what I have done is I have taken, I'm sure you can see this on the screen here, but the bit that I've highlighted is my prompt. And I'm saying, this is a transcript of the video. I'm going to ask questions and you will reply based on answers from within that transcript. Now, this will show some of the power of being able to generate answers from different sections of the document. But what I want you to remember in your mind is that this will work across multiple documents. So this transcript is from our April feature release that we completed last week, and it's me going through and telling everybody about all the different features that we released within that. So I've got a couple of questions that I am going to ask it. So let me find the right bit. So first of all, I'm going to show you the extractive kind of answer. So if I just add what new features were released in Fuse's April release, and then it's able to tell me the 4 key improvements included were quick reports, French Canadian, universal transcriptions, and Fuse Assistant. And you can see that here. So it's extracting that particular section and it's presenting that to me. So let's ask it something that isn't as simple as that. So if I now ask it a question such as a Fuse customer who has language requirements in English, French, German, and French Canadian, will video transcriptions work for me? Now, the key thing in the transcript here is that we don't mention French Canadian in the transcription languages within the article text, but I do mention that we've just released French Canadian as a separate object. So it's taking, it'll take the answer from 2 different parts. So let's submit that. And there you go. You can see that it will transcribe videos in English, French, Spanish, and all of that. And then these transcripts, and then you can see at the bottom there, you can transcribe your videos and then translate them into French Canadian or any other language as you need it. So it's able to answer that question by piecing together the various different parts of the transcript itself. And then I'm going to ask it a question. Do I need to ask Fuse to switch on any of the features? Now, in the video, I talk about the features separately. So again, they're in different sections. And for some I do mention, for some I don't. So you can see here, I do mention it about quick reports that you're going to need to raise a ticket if you want it switched on. But the other ones, no, you don't need to be able to do that. So I suppose what I really want you to do is to think about and maybe dream a little bit with me here. But imagine the power of this technology when it is trained and running across all of your internal corporate knowledge. The ability to be able to ask questions and get in-depth answers that you'll then be able to converse with the AI afterward to be able to understand things more fully, rather than simply being able to extract an answer and hoping that that is enough, which sometimes it is, and sometimes actually you need more. The AI will be able to go much deeper because it understands the context. You just asked it a question, you can now ask it another one as well. And it's able to take all of the content from, all of the knowledge from within all of your content and be able to create the correct answers for that. So again, really, really powerful tool. And I think it's going to be a key tool when it comes to continuous day-to-day learning in the very near future. And actually, I want to ask you one more question.
Just to say, Reece, we are 10 minutes. So just a heads up, we've got 10 minutes left.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Well, that's fine. Well, I will, let me just ask you one more question. So I've asked the Fuse Assistant if it's is it a paid for option? So basically, the answer in here, is that it's not a paid for option, but it does bring me a lot of extra information back. And actually, this information is not actually correct. And so the reason why I wanted to just show that very quickly was because consumer generative AI is not yet accurate. And I think it's really important for us to talk about that as well. You know, one of those issues is that it has an ability to hallucinate. So at the moment, why we are focused on extractive answers and why we want to bring that into the product is to make sure that we get the accurate answers that all of our clients are asking us for. So, you know, I suppose just to explain why it hallucinates, you know, the LLM, which is a large language model, you know, its primary purpose, as I said before, is to predict the next word and have a conversation that's human-like. But in terms of the data that ChatGPT, for example, is trained on, it's trained on the internet. So all the knowledge from the internet is consumed by it. Now, is all the knowledge on the internet accurate? No, it's not. You know, and so that is, I mean, it's much more complicated than that, but that is one of the key reasons why there is some hallucination. Now, there are ways around a lot of these things. You know, you can certainly build things into prompts and make sure that, you know, we have that, you can tell it to only give you back knowledge from specific sources, specific areas, you know, but I think that is why we are waiting for the corporate generative AI and why we can't just plug things like ChatGPT in there, because you can't plug something into your corporate environment that is trained on the internet. It needs to be trained on your information, your knowledge, you know, so that it is accurate. And of course, there's lots of privacy concerns, you know, if you then plug into a third-party system that's consuming all of your data, you know, so I think that's where we're going. And as we said, you know, that is a focus of ours and something that we're also looking to bring in. And then the final part, I just want to talk a little bit about personalized learning with the AI coach. Because I joke to Steve all the time that AI is moving at such a pace. I really can't imagine what the future would look like in 5 years' time. But I think considering everything that we've shown you so far, it's obvious that there's going to be a shift from the more traditional content creation and search to truly generative learning. And maybe, you know, what could that look like? Well, no, I suppose it's because we understand a lot about your each of your users, because you've already got the corporate brain, because all of the data is, you know, well understood and formatted in the right way. Then we believe that the future, you know, is going to allow an AI coach to be able to, you know, pitch the content at the right level. You know, so rather than you having to create lots of content, it could be that the AI coach generates that content from all the knowledge and all of the work that you've done in the background, and then be able to pitch it for that right level. That right level might mean that somebody is, you know, low on the skill in this particular area and they need to better understand that. But if you're an expert in that area, then it can generate something that's much different to that. You can have it delivered in your preferred format, you know, so it could be that you want to just consume it in a short bite-sized video. Maybe you want to have something that's a much more deeper dive in an article, or maybe you do want it in a full course. It will be able to generate that for you as well. It could also then, as you're going through it, summarize something. So actually just give me the TLDR, or actually expand on that as well. Tell me more about this particular subject, and because it understands my job role, the industry, it's able to give me the right context, you know, and make sure that the examples that I use are relevant for my industry, which I always think is one of the you know, the key things when it comes to content creation, is having those contextually relevant examples, so it's easier for me to understand the theory and put that into practice. And then also assessments as well. I think that's another brilliant area that's going to be revolutionized, because we'll be able to build these assessments on the fly to be able to test competency. There are some products out there that are doing that at the moment, and then able to actually adjust the questions asked, you know, based on the answers and your success or failure rate when it comes to those answers as well. So there's kind of like a lot going on in that space. I mean, Steve, you know, I know you're a particular fan of the AI coach. What do you think in this area? Anything else you would add?
Well, I think great to show a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think we're scratching the surface, right, between that and the difference between a coach and a mentor, right? I think on both those things. So I think there is the ability for it not to be just a passive coach, which is the obvious thing, right? I think I'm super excited right now, the ability to create an AI coach of the best salespeople, of the best service people. So if Mary is the best salesperson in the company, what would Mary say, right? What would Mary do? If Jack is the best service person inside it, what would Jack do? So I think I'm phenomenally excited about that capability that's pretty much here and now to deliver that type of capability. But then I think as a Card Academy showing on the side here, there's also capability to be proactive in your learning journey. So if I'm going through a Udemy course or you know, something of that nature, for it to understand what I'm doing and to enrich my experience by probing me, asking me reflective questions, doing the things that you would imagine having. If you had a physical coach that was an expert on a subject next to you, what would that be doing? And how do we make more of that available and allow the AI to do that, I think is one of the things that allows us to achieve the goal, which I think this is all about, right? You know, AI for us is all about accelerating learning, right? Through all the things we talked about. And I think that AI coach piece is, we know coaching is key, but it's not scalable. For this to scale coaching, huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is and you know, I have to give credit to the Khan Academy here, you know, for how fast that they were able to implement. This is an implementation of GPT-4, which is the latest version as well, into this. But you know, I know, Steve, you know, with Fuse School, it's so close to all of our hearts at Fuse as well. I think there's you know, it's not just about getting it into Fuse, but it's actually been able to help democratize knowledge and education and learning in a new way. It's a new paradigm, right, for being able to do that.
I think that's the dream, right? I think the dream is exactly that, that's why I think we're super excited, not just for the corporate part, but as you said, the social aspect, to allow every child to have a hyper-personalized experience, every adult too. I mean, that's ultimately it, is, you know, to create a hyper-personalized experience that understands my learning level, who I am, what I do or don't know, and is able to adjust itself to support me and guide me. I think it is what's now available, right? And it's just now, the technology is no longer a barrier, it's just the kinks of modeling it, training it, interacting, making it behave, make sure it doesn't, you know, and don't forget what we're corporate version or a company version is very different to the problems that we've seen in the chat around the other bits. So just with a few minutes left, Reece, I'm just thinking what the key wrap-ups. Hey, what do you have a little, show us the next slide, the next video, because I think that's a little teaser for Fuse, isn't it? And what you're thinking of doing with the generative AI and the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were just, again, you know, we were just dreaming about what the future might look like. And, you know, for us, it's a simplification, you know, and so that we can focus more on natural language. So, you know, just to play you this really quick example of what we think it might look like. It's very similar, I suppose, in a way to Calm, but rather than necessarily having something as a chatbot, actually all of this experience should be integrated together. You know, so you can search for something, or you can ask a question, or you can ask for advice, or you can ask for learning. All of that should happen from the same interface, because as a user, ultimately, you don't want to have to go to 3 or 4 different places. You want to be able to go to one particular place. So this is kind of how we see it working in that future. You can still search through all the results, but you know, I think that the generative AI aspect of this and the ability to then be coached on certain subjects, if you've only got 2 minutes before you walk into a sales meeting, for example, to be able to get the very best of that and have it taught really quickly, it is absolutely vital for continuous learning. And that's where I see everybody using their phones and being on, you know, the learning platform all, you know, every day, to be able to consume these very small bite-sized things that they need to be able to be productive in the moment.
And maybe just to finish your statement on that piece, right, which I think this is the move, obviously, from extractive to generative. One of the things we're still working out is how you get rid of the hallucination problem of generative. Yeah. And we haven't had time to go through it today, but obviously generative is amazing because the quality of how it refines and processes the answer for you is the next level, not just to extract it, but to surface that in a way that I understand based on myself. But I think the part that's interesting now is how do you make sure you get around the hallucinations or the wrong answers? And I think we've resolved that, right? We can't give the secret sauce out on the session. So I'm sure there might be a couple of competitors inside here, but we believe that we've got a way to allow that generative stuff to happen, but in a way that allows the accuracy to happen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see a load of questions in the Q&A around this kind of area. And you know, we're going to take all these questions away, yeah, and we'll answer some of these as well. But so Steve, why don't you wrap it up for us?
Yeah. So I think just a final couple of things I think therefore to say, right, is, you know, we talked about I guess the different stakeholders of AI, why it's interesting. So, you know, for us, it's these 3 audiences: the stakeholders, the content creation, the end users. For the stakeholders, this technology and learning should allow us to increase productivity, you know, increase performance and people retention. That's why we're doing it, and the arguments towards adopting it. The content creator, we're able to produce better quality content. We get rid of the stuff we don't like doing and allow us to do more fun stuff. And then user, you know, it is this accelerated hyper-personalization to allow better learning, removing the language barrier, the time to the answer, engagement through better recommendations, the time to performance by having that coach that allows me to get, you know, accelerate further. And also my career coach, you know, different to that performance coach. Performance coach is, how do you help me in that job today? Versus my career coach is, how do you start to prepare me for my job for tomorrow? So last couple of final parts. So summarize why, because we think, you know, there's a massive opportunity that these technologies if adopted in the right way and embedded into platforms like Fuse. And we're not the whole world of AI, right? We're just trying to pick and mix, but also recognize different AI tools like the ones that Reece showed will be done. And ultimately, it is about this, right? Accelerating learning and performance. And I think as a final slide, I think there's just someone here that just wants to just say a few words.
Hey, Reece, I just wanted to say thanks for a great presentation and wanted to say thanks for such great participation from across the world. Hey, Reece, I just wanted to say.
Oh, it's so good. He said, want to say it twice. So yes, a little bit of.
Well, I'm on it. I'm on it.
Sorry, Barack, we cloned you. You're now available. So away we go. So, guys, so to say thank you for those that stayed on. We know we go a few minutes over. Thank you so much for the presentation. We absolutely will get the presentation out to everybody that's registered and everybody that's come on board. But yeah, let us know. Well, we see some good thumbs up and some love. So hopefully you enjoyed it. We did too. So if you want more of these, just let us know.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for everything.